Bună ziua, ladies and gentlemen. That's as far as my Romanian goes, by the way. And your digital companions that I'm sure you brought along with you on your devices today. It's my pleasure to welcome you today at EY's 4th Intelligent Automation Conference hosted here in beautiful Bucharest, an event that is designed to help you connect solutions and ideas in the future of building a better working world. My name is Sunil Mehta, and my main job when I'm not doing moderation events like this is I work with global organizations on intelligent automation solutions to help them drive digital transformations. I have a long history of working in technology, over 20 plus years, having worked with companies such as IBM and Tata Consulting. I joined EY's intelligent automation practice, where I've been helping large organizations, as I mentioned, global organizations, develop integrated end-to-end solutions and helping them benefit from intelligent automations such as RPA, machine learning, OCR, all the way to artificial intelligence. And these are topics that you're going to hear a lot about today. There's a lot of strategizing, a great deal of strategizing, and the creation of agile work environments in which people and technology can execute seamless processes that bring value and added each resource, human and digital. We've got a great mix of speakers today. There'll be some great ideas flowing, and all I ask for you is to keep your minds open so that you take some of these great ideas back to your own organizations. We've put together a fantastic agenda, an agenda that will take you from the macro level of automation market with global insights from the likes of Forrester Research to leading automation vendor solutions, roadmaps, and then the broader ethical, societal, and organizational impact of trust in AI technologies. And then during the lunch, you'll have a chance to have a look at some of the solutions in the demo booths and speak to some of our speakers. And in the second part of the day, we'll be dedicated on some focused sessions on the main pillars of digital transformation. And that's people, process and data, and technology. Our last session brings you back here to the plenary, and we're going to be talking about some really cool topics that you can take back to your day-to-day roles, to your daily meetings, to your colleagues, when you hang out with your friends. And this is all about the application of technology in our everyday lives. And trust me, you really don't want to be missing these. We've got 2 fantastic startups, part of Techstars. It's a network of that supports entrepreneurs, mentorship, and financing to turn their ideas into successful solutions. Really good sessions. So to kick off today's topics, I'm going to invite one of my colleagues, Aurelia Custake, to the stage. Aurelia has over 20 years of consulting experience. Aurelia also leads EY's intelligent automation practice here in Romania. And she's served as a trusted advisor to global companies and really helped them along their digital journeys. But Aurelia does not come alone. She's put together a fantastic team, and that team is going to help deliver a message in a very special and a very unique way. Team, I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this. Music maestro, please.
Thank you to our artist. It was impressive. It's difficult for me to talk after such a great performance. Bună dimineața, good morning. It was impressive to see how a beautiful piece of music is performed together by humans and new software instruments. I don't know how many of you realize the combination. And I thank you to our artists because they took this challenge of performing in front of you with this combination. Thank you to our 4th edition of the EY Regional Intelligent Automation Conference. Thank you for coming here. Welcome to Bucharest. Welcome to our today's concerts of technologies that will expand your imagination and will inspire you to create your own piece of music. We were inspired by the event which takes place this month in Romania, which is George Enescu Music Festival, which is a landmark event for our country, which attracts classical music lovers from around the world. And an orchestra, we think it's a beautiful metaphor for what happens within an organization. Each member plays his instrument, uses his skills, his talent, his passion to contribute to a bigger piece of music. And synchronization is critical. No matter how well the composer was or how good the director directs the orchestra, it is only when the instruments are adequately tuned and the musicians are playing the fit-for-purpose instruments in order to create a smooth piece of music. And this is what we are aiming to address today. We are looking how to combine technologies, how to orchestrate various pieces of technologies in order to bring most in the automation value, while at the same time making use of the skills the users have and train them to have the appropriate skills. Before we begin, let's answer a question. Why? Why automation? In the last 4 years of delivering on global automation projects, I was close to pressing matters of business executives, and I can sum them up in 3 themes which span across industries. First is workforce deficit. The workforce crisis that we all face today involves changing employees' expectations, changing skills that are needed to use the new technologies. And this changes the way we manage talent in our organizations. It changes the way we recruit people, it changes the way we manage performance, it changes the way we retain people. And this combined with the aging population drives a fundamental change in the labor market. A second theme is around customers. The customers we have from, the pressure we have from customers, because ourselves as consumers, we also want customized products, customized services, convenience. So hyper-personalization, omni-channel, availability every time, everywhere. These are pressing matters for all of us. And the third one would be cost reduction. This was and is going to continue to stay on the agenda of business executives. And how can we use technology to address such challenges? These challenges are not new. However, they climbed on the top of the agenda of board members because of the velocity of the advancement of technology. Our EY global survey called CEO Imperative from this year, which was issued 2 months ago, shows that 57% of board members have number one priority, number one challenge on their agenda, technology-induced job losses, number one. And this is followed closely by cybersecurity for 49%, and then a new topic, ethics of AI, number 3. It's number 3 on their agenda, ethics of AI. So to these challenges, automation is an answer. Automation is an answer to many challenges if companies have a certain organizational and maturity level. And what we see in our experience is that although technology was tested, was proven, and brought benefits to a lot of organizations, others have failed to do so. Why? This is what we are aiming to answer today, and we thought of tackling the answer to these questions by structuring the conference in the afternoon in 3 workshops, tackling 3 themes, right? People, processes and data, and technologies. And let's take them one by one. Processes and data. We all know that the value of the automation is highly dependent on the type of processes we select. And the shocking 51% of the companies who responded to Forrester survey declared that they could not scale up to more than 10 bots. And you will hear more from Craig later about this subject. What is the root cause for such a situation? Unstandardized processes, no visibility over the process metrics, maybe undocumented processes, outdated data or unintegrated data leading to questions over the outputs of the machine learning algorithms. These are challenges which automation projects are bringing up to surface, and they are raising red flags for us as business leaders that a wider business transformation is needed. When we talk to people, are our employees engaged and dedicated to perform a change, to use the new technologies? Are all the stakeholders aligned? Are we talking about business? Are we talking about IT? Are we talking about business and IT? How do we know which type of activities employees can perform after the bots will take their repetitive tasks? How can we train them? What type of communication plan we need to put in place? These type of questions we will answer in session B in the afternoon. And if we think how easy the children are learning new technologies, are enjoying using new technologies, can we shift our mindset to be able to accept change and use the new technologies in our business as easy as they do? And I will invite you during the lunch break at one of the demo booths at Small Academy to take the challenge and try to think like a kid, to see how children are learning new technologies today. And if we think about technologies, the third pillar, we need to understand their functionalities very well. We need to understand the roadmap, where they are going. This is why we invited many technology providers here today to speak to you. But also we have questions like, is my infrastructure ready to scale up? Can I use intelligent automation to migrate to new systems? Is automation as a service functioning? Is it an option for the organizations who do not want to develop internal capabilities and internal skills? And we will talk about these subjects in session C in the afternoon. And spanning across these subjects, bringing new technologies is raising new risks for organizations. Who is accountable for the transactions performed by a virtual employee? Is the data, the quality of the data good enough so that results of the machine learning algorithms can be trusted? This type of challenges and risks led to the need for the business to develop a risk management framework and to maintain it. And we will hear more about this subject from Kathy Kobe, who is our global leader for Trusted AI. Many topics, many challenges to address, many questions to answer with the purpose of identifying the appropriate technologies to help you scale up and drive really the automation to the next level and have benefits from the automation, actual benefits. And then the way you orchestrate the idea that you will hear today from our speakers is your piece of art. So with that in mind, I wish you a great day, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Aurelia. So now what I'd like to do is welcome on stage one of our experts, often quoted in multiple journals, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, one of our experts, Craig Le Clair, who also has a book called The Invisible Robot. And he's bringing to you today some extensive knowledge on robotics, intelligent automation, and AI. Please welcome him on stage.
Thank you all. It's a great group, and Aurelia, thank you for that wonderful concert opening. I'm going to talk about automation, but it struck me as they were playing that it was highly deterministic, right? Every note was articulated in the script, in the scores that they were playing. And I'm a jazz lover as well, and you know, jazz plays off of lead sheets, which are just a summary, you know, just the the major chord changes and individual notes. And the jazz player can improvise, can play any kind of chord voicings they want. So it's more of a non-deterministic approach. It's much like machine learning. So that's the distinction where we're moving from a world of deterministic to non-deterministic automation, which is, I don't know, it was great. So the forces of automation. Now, you know, we could talk about technologies all day. There are hundreds of AI technology groups. But if you had to net them all out, and this is sort of the setup for the invisible robots, there really are three forces of automation that are really restructuring work. And the first one is scale, which I'll talk a little bit about. But basically, new scale is digital, based on data, and it just doesn't, you know, need as many people as it used to, and has other implications as well. Convergence, think of as it's sort of IoT, but it's embedding digital smarts in the physical world. Yeah. One of my favorite AI books, probably one of the better ones written, is called AI Superpowers. And it argues that China is a real threat for AI, not because of the algorithms or the processing capability, but because they have more data. Because they're so good at embedding, because they understand the physical world better than the Western economies, and they're embedding sensors in everything, even in their citizens, they're going to have more data to train their algorithms with. And so that's the big threat, is data from Alibaba and the larger number of people, so they'll be able to train their algorithms at a better rate. And finally, control, which has a number of aspects, but basically controls moving from people to algorithms. Now this is, a simple way to think about this is if you really look at what changed the internet, what drove the internet, it was, you know, the cost of making a search was driven to zero. So you no longer needed classified ads. The music industry was disrupted. It was really about economics. So in this era that we're entering, the cost of making decisions is going to move to zero. It's going to move from having people make decisions that are very expensive to machines that can make decisions non-deterministically with machine learning algorithms. That's the economics that's going to drive things. And that has a number of implications. I really mentioned some of them around unpredictability, losing control of our data, which we already have, as that occurs. So anyway, those are the forces of automation. And basically, you know, scale is interesting. How many of you took an economics course somewhere in your career, right? And they taught you about microeconomics and the economies of scale. And they did it, and they said that scale required three things. If you're going to grow your business, you needed more land, you needed more dollars, and you needed more people. Well, today you don't. Today the land is kind of obsolete. You grow digitally based on cloud. You know, you can open up a laptop instead of a factory. Basically, you can use sweat equity and tend to big dollars. A lot of the most impressive companies are not based on dollars. And personas, you know, that's my taxonomy for the future of work, which we'll just touch on a little bit at the end. But basically, you know, there are 12 personas that we've categorized all occupations into. And we use the US data set because it's actually the best data set for occupational statistics in the world, as far as we could see. And basically, you take the 900 occupations, and you can map them into these 12 personas. And the reason they're grouped is because their alignment with the advancement in automations are very similar. So you take the skills in each persona and look at their relationship to the advancing automation. So basically, in the old form of scale, you needed people from, you know, you needed physical workers. You needed basically from all personas. And now, in the new form of scale, it's people in this room. It's the digital elite. Look at some of these numbers. Facebook, Apple, basically the revenue per employee is a measure of scale. The revenue per employee, 1.6 million for Facebook, for 25,000 people, 1.85 million for Apple. And basically, a small number of people can generate a lot of scale. Now, AI is a fast-growing, but it's not one thing, as we know. I mean, if you think of it in terms of this circular diagram, there's sensing, there's thinking, there's acting, there's image and video analysis. In Romania, I've noticed that there seems to be a lot of innovation in computer vision, which is very important for the RPA market, which is accelerating. But machine learning platforms, deep learning platforms, natural language generation, it's all about how do you organize the building blocks. Now, who knows who this is? Well, I'll leave you guessing on that. But basically, the AI algorithms are not new. This is the first paper written on AI. What's new is data and availability and processing power. Which of these do you think is most interesting to you? Computer vision, again, very important for manipulating applications on desktops, which is very important for RPA. And deep learning, which introduces a lot of the explainability issues. Excuse me. So deep learning has the layers and layers of neural capability, and each layer might have a certain outcome and a certain probabilistic underpinning. And once you've gotten to that layer, you kind of throw away the data. So it becomes very opaque. So these are just some of the areas that are trending. Now, we're starting to see convergence everywhere. These are just different examples that we're seeing. We had an incident that was reported. There were some teenagers that were playing hide and seek, one hiding in a garbage can, which wasn't too, it ended well. But all of the convergence capabilities introduce new levels of concern. I interviewed in Invisible Robots. You look at the Kiva systems over there, that's an Amazon plant. It's actually some interesting implications for diversifying the workforce. I interviewed a woman who couldn't really do the job before because it required lifting 30-pound crates all day, and her back was hurting, and she had to. The Kiva robots actually do a lot of that. So now her focus is more on keeping the Kiva robots behaving. So there's a lot of implications for the way work is changing. But convergence is really critical. So what does this landscape look like? So, Daniel Dines was on the cover of Fortune magazine this week. I don't know how many of you saw that. Was the first billionaire in Romania, I think, was the title, right? Congratulations, Daniel. I've known him since 2014, and this is a very strong individual with a lot of character, integrity, and has built a very transparent, great company. So Romania should be very proud of that fact. The valuations in the RPA market are just, frankly, a little ridiculous. You see here that in 2019, collectively, the three top players reached a valuation of $10.8 billion. All software markets that emerge go through a life cycle. And right now we're in a very excited period for RPA. And I'll talk about where it's going. But basically, there's been a lot of excitement. This is some recent data from Forrester. Many of you in this room are putting in automation. So you're part of the service community, which is the top green bar. Right? So this is the effort by systems integrators, global SIs, managed service companies, deploying robotic process automation. The lower bar is the growth in the RPA platform market. So Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, UiPath would be part of that lower green bar. And you see that's a very healthy $4.2 billion in 2023, right? That's really significant growth, significant importance for an organization where the top 3 companies no one ever heard of 5 years ago, 3 years ago, right? This has been amazing. But the line I want to focus on, because of the group here, is the top line. I originally thought, when I first started covering RPA at Forrester in 2014, was there wouldn't be a lot of services, because the whole concept of RPA was non-invasive. It was it was companies frustrated with everyone telling them they needed to transform digitally, but making no progress. They were hiring chief digital officers and putting big budgets and trying to transform digitally, and they weren't going anywhere. That's what our data said. Our data said it was a top initiative, for 90% of companies, and then we looked at the progress, and it was like 5%. And along comes RPA, which, there's no requirements analysis. There's no, your skies do not darken with consultants flying in and never leaving, much to the dismay of probably somebody in this room. So I thought there wouldn't be a lot of services. But I was wrong, as I often am. The service to license ratio, which is a metric that we track, is basically for every dollar of licensed software, how many dollars of services does it take to make it productive? The services to license ratio. Yeah? 3.4 to 1 is actually pretty significant. 3.4. So what are these service companies doing? They're not just building bots. As RPA has accelerated, the concern about data security, concern about governance, having multiple platforms, the inability to scale, companies are setting up automation centers. They're setting up strike teams. And that's what these consultants are helping them do. Also, the biggest correlation to success in any automation, as I said earlier, is finding the right use case to apply automation to. So a lot of this work is helping companies figure out the top 10 use cases for task automation. Yeah. And third is a little unfortunate, but the maintenance of bots is a lot harder than people thought. In other words, bots, because they have no inherent intelligence, do not handle variability at all. And what happens when you have a concept that's based on directly manipulating an application on a desktop that a human would, in the same way a human would, with human credentials, it makes it very vulnerable to changes in those applications. So bots are breaking left and right because the applications are being upgraded. And you get into large organizations, and the SAP team is doing an upgrade and doesn't even tell anybody, and all the bots break. So there's a lot more maintenance. I had one top telecommunications company call me, and if you ever thought of being an analyst, I'll talk you out of it real quick. You take about 100 30-minute calls every quarter. And it's people that have been working on problems for maybe years, and you get 30 minutes to try to help them. So I got one, and they said, we're not getting the ROI that you say we should in your reports. I said, well, it's obviously my fault right away. Well, they had 90 decisions in their bot. And, for a platform, an RPA platform that was not designed with any inherent decision management. So they should have architected the bot differently. So bot maintenance has really been big. Now, the good news is that the services license ratio we're expecting to go down to 2.8 to 1. Because companies will internalize the development, they'll pick better use cases, and they'll already have their operating model set up, which will be broader than RPA. RPA is really the, I did a talk in Miami the other day, and I said it was your gateway drug to higher automation, and they immediately got that in Miami, but perhaps not here. This is where the RPA is being installed worldwide. You see it's, it's fairly typical North America and EMEA leading in terms of innovation with technology. You're going to get all these slides if you want them, whether you want them or not. So now this is a little bit of an automation framework that Forrester built in order to help automation centers try to organize the automations in their enterprise. And that's really the issue, is that, as we'll see in a minute, automations are popping up like mushrooms after a rainfall. So every company has these 8 domains of automation. So this is the view you should have from your automation center. And there might be hundreds of automations in each of these. Infrastructure automation, marketing automation, process automation. So basically we came up with these 9 simple dimensions to be able to characterize or profile any automation. And I won't go through them. As you can see, they're actually not so simple. But basically, from a process perspective, any automation has certain characteristics. Data. Does it handle unstructured data or just structured data? Does it handle both? Right? Unstructured data requires a text analytics layer to understand and synthesize the intent. Is there a learning component? As we'll see, RPA has no inherent AI or learning component. Is it deterministic or non-deterministic? We talked about that relative to the orchestra starting out, right? And then what is the enterprise effect? This robotics quotient is a measure of how a company is ready to embrace automation. And depending upon your process profile, they may not be ready. What is the operating effect? Some of these automations drive towards a more federated operating model. By that I mean there's more development in the business and less in central technology management groups. And automation is really restructuring how organizations will work. Governance auditability, the ability to see how transparent, how opaque is the inherent process itself, and their people effect. But anyway, you can use those, and a few of us, including myself, used to be in a band at various points in our lives. This is sort of the monitor. They have one in the back, actually, when you control the microphones that are up against an amplifier, and my microphone was always turned very low because I did not have a very good singing voice. I was a keyboard player. But anyway, so we use the same graphical display, just to show, so here's Automation X, RPA. It only handles structured data. It's completely coded. It's deterministic. It has a very high robotics quotient. It tends to be federated in the business. So anyway, I won't go through all of them, but basically you see that this is a way to kind of characterize an automation. And this islands of automation issue, we think in 2020 is going to be a huge issue. Islands of automation are just popping up everywhere. Companies have 6 or 7 different chatbot stacks they're bringing in. One for IT service management, and maybe one for the virtual agent, the B2C conversational intelligence. Maybe they're the same underlying technology. Maybe one's built on Cortana. Maybe one is a small ISV like a Druid that's going to talk to you later. A lot of, as we talked about with the AI building blocks, a lot of the talent in AI is aggregating diverse sets of automation and targeting them at a use case in the most productive way. Well, you need an overall orchestration layer to do that. Look at the RPA world right now. This is recent data. Companies already have, only 15% of companies with maturity in RPA have only one vendor. 2 to 3 RPA vendors, 32%, 23% today. Companies are already allowing proliferation of these tools. And one of the reasons that scale is difficult. Now, what we think is going to emerge is this notion of orchestration for automation. So kind of new markets, we think this is going to be kind of a new market opportunity, that companies will need a light layer, to be able to orchestrate these various automations and bring them to bear on a particular use case. And you never know how these things are going to shake out. But I think the RPA platforms are in pretty good shape. I have them in the domain-specific platforms because, RPA, it had to manage hundreds, if not thousands, of individual automations, task automation being very short. A lot of these other technology, these AI areas, they just came in assuming they would just control one particular use case. They didn't have to have a control center and a control tower, and they never had the architecture to manage multiple automations. RPA does, which may be ultimately the biggest value, rather than the task automation itself. There will also be, you have, the large SIs, the Wipros, the Infosys, the IBMs that have automation platforms, open source and proprietary technology that includes every aspect of AI. And I think they'll be getting into this business as well. And then you have the systems integrators themselves, Ernst & Young being Accenture, Cognizant, Deloitte. So we think that market's going to occur. So what is the path to intelligent process automation? We think that today's start is really RPA, and RPA phase 1 is where we are. Phase 1 being task automation. I'll show you that a slide that really makes that clear in a minute. But basically, there's no intelligence with that. But what we're seeing is a lot of investment in a combination of text analytics and RPA, and that's your phase 2 here. That's basically where you have a layer of analytics to deal with unstructured data. Because the RPA bots are pretty dumb. You have to tell them exactly what to do, and the way you tell them what to do is with tagged information or structured information. They know how to operate on that. So this is the biggest investment area right now in the combination of the two. And it might be ripping through emails, understanding the PDFs, the bots doing that, being able to throw them into a queue for different types of resolution. It might be going into loan documents and ripping out and summarizing and aggregating and extracting entities from that, moving it into a tagged set that RPA bots can find errors before they get to the back office. Things like that, really powerful. But ultimately, you have to go to phase 3. If you don't go to this phase 3, then the market valuations I showed you earlier of $7.x billion for the RPA platform vendors is going to just disappear. You can't be worth $7 billion as a category if you just do task automation that you're doing today. So you need to combine it with AI building blocks. And again, the orchestration capability of RPA gives it that ability to do that. So I think it's very, very possible, and I think it will. So here's an example. So stage 3 basically has things like exception frameworks, exception management to handle more variability from task automation. But here's an example for chatbots. And we're going to see a couple on my panel later about virtual agents and chatbots. But basically, the whole structure is always the same. You have the conversational intelligence piece or the intent piece where you're trying to understand what the human is trying to do. That could be a human customer that formerly would call a cubicle worker in a contact center, right? Or it could be an internal employee that you're trying to give direction to. But there's an intent part, and the action part is sort of the hard part where you have a workflow script that's trying to drive the intent down the right path to get resolution. But ultimately, you have to get to knowledge bases, unstructured data, and that's where RPA comes in. The bots are part of the action component. I'm sure many of you have used the chat bots that the major banks provide, right? I mean, they're pretty lame. They don't do anything. They just answer standard questions because they don't have the RPA component or the bots to go into the transaction systems. That's the domain where the bots roam and provide the most value. They go into the transaction systems and the applications as if they're human and they can execute. Yeah, and that hasn't happened yet. But this is an architecture that is advancing, relatively quickly. Ultimately, where RPA has to go is, somebody's going to build. There was a time when it was ridiculous that everyone would have their own computer. I bet the people in this room have 5 or 6 computers each. There will be a time where every employee will have their own personal robot that will help them with their work. If there's anything I'm certain about, and I'm uncertain about a lot of stuff I've shown you, I am certain about that. So RPA has to grow in sophistication to incorporate conversational intelligence. And this is going to come out of the attended mode area of RPA, which is where right now you have humans in contact centers, agents that will interact with a bot in very simple, basic ways. Start a process, or here's an account number. But ultimately, that piece of interaction has to get much more sophisticated along the lines of this, where today we have unattended bots where we're just absorbing hours. Attended today, you have bots that are helping people do that address update that I didn't want to do. But ultimately, you have to have citizen-driven bots where the people are helping the bots. The people are enhancing the bots to do more and more things. And that's really transformative. Ultimately, you're going to have bots helping other bots, and then we're all in big trouble. And that's where the invisible robot in the quiet of the night is the case here. Now, most of you, know this. I'm just going to skip over this. But there is a difference between different RPA bots, some that are in the attended world and some are in the unattended world. So the ROI numbers there are a little bit deceiving because you can build a bot for $50,000. It can. Sorry for the dollars. Maybe I'll use euros. Maybe I'll use ROMs. But basically, it costs a certain amount of money to build a bot, and then the bot might take $15,000 a year to maintain, and then you can offload or get offset FTEs equivalent to 2 to 3.5. Those are the numbers we're getting. Boy, that makes a lot of economic sense. Now, in the attended world, you have slightly less productivity numbers, but you have a lot more desktops. You have a lot more people. So in the unattended world, you tend to focus on the 200 people in the back office, and the bots are scheduled, and they go off and attack those desktops. In the attended world, they're just little, productivity aids. But you can have just as much ROI on the attended world. It's just across a lower level of productivity across a larger number of desktops. So most of the RPA today is in finance and accounting. I mean, how boring is that? I mean, give me a break. But it's moving into line of business, and that's where you need this conversational intelligence. It's basically, these are all the business shared services. I mean, the good news is that every company has most of these things, right? So it's very, 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 very open. This is the finance and accounting. Any real, and I apologize to Ernst & Young, who has real accountants and things that understand these. This is my summary of the finance and accounting area, which is pretty horrible. But if you look at it in terms of the dark areas, that's where the biggest FTE takeouts. There's one global bank I speak with, that monthly, quarterly close, they have 1,800 people doing that. That's quarterly and end of the year. The average number of decisions made by those people is 2.7. Yeah, so their plan is to robotize 40% of those people in 2 years. The attended area, I think, is showing more distinction than the unattended world for RPA right now, because of the human-in-the-loop aspects. And because of the evolution of RPA, we'll build on that human-robot interaction to really build that citizen, that low code, that way that will ultimately allow a human to enhance and manage their own robot. That's the key to everyone having their own robot. Yeah, and that's the key to the RPA industry, maintaining the value that we showed earlier. And this just shows you the one point here is that if you can find high productivity that also raises customer experience, the thing that drives me a little bit crazy with all of this is that companies have a narrative about lifting the all of these robotics and just lifting the human spirit, giving people better jobs and so forth. Meanwhile, they invite me into meeting rooms to help build business cases based on taking people out of jobs. So there's a conflicting narrative here. But there is one thing that's true, that you can do a lot with RPA and bots in general that can allow you to do better things for your customers. And that's this top box here. There's way too much focus on ROI and cost takeout for RPA right now, and not enough in this upper block. Yeah, just having a bot handle basic security questions that can, speed up a call. Just things like address updates. It's amazing how in telecommunications, even if you have a really good system, you're doing 10,000 address updates a month, and you might have any human in the loop process will have a 1 or 2% error rate. Well, you're turning off service sometimes for a customer based on an incorrect address. It's bad customer experience. Bots are very reliable. They don't make mistakes. They don't make mistakes. So data quality is a real benefit of a lot of this technology. It's not just about humans being taken out of jobs. This is a really, I write these reports for a living, basically, and sometimes you spend months and months and no one reads. You get very low readership, and then you do one in a couple hours and it goes off the charts. I did one called the Rule of 5 for RPA success. And basically, because I saw RPA being misapplied in too many different cases. So it's very simple. 5 decisions or less. RPA was not built like a BPM platform. It wasn't built with decision management. When you get too many rules, too many decisions, then the probability of them being problematic and high maintenance is pretty high. So you got to keep the decisions low. You have to keep the number of applications. Because of that issue of maintenance I talked about, because the talent of RPA is not using APIs, there's a reason we built APIs, because they insulate you from application changes. RPA works directly with more advancing techniques like computer vision that will help this problem, but when applications change, bots tend to break. So keep the number of applications. In today's market, keep the number of applications to 5 or less, and try to find very strict, structured click streams, mouse movements, human input and output. If you can keep that to 500 clicks, you can find processes that look like this. Now, what's interesting about this chart is look at the human time in minutes for the task automation. These are your typical places, HR and finance. 3 minutes here, 4 minutes there. You go, that's not much time. Well, what's the big deal? Well, look at the number of times per year these things are done. So a 3-minute task automation that's done 145,000 times, do the math. This is what RPA is doing today. But these sort of rule of 5 task automations, companies are going to run out of those. And that's where RPA needs to accelerate to being more intelligent, deal with decision management externally, maybe by linking to machine learning algorithms. And again, the orchestration capability can help with that. They don't need to be in one stack. You can just light up a decision from some AI algorithm in Google, bring that back, and then launch the digital worker that's going to do a multiple rule of 5 task automations. That's the kind of coordination I see happening. This is just looking at some of the other process technologies. They have different capabilities. I won't go through these because I'm getting a little short on time. But there is a nice complementary aspect with some of these other more sophisticated process areas like business process management. In a sense, BPM is an end-to-end process orchestration, and it looks at various steps or queues, and you've all seen process maps, and there are people normally working off those queues. Well, now there are some people and there are some robots that are working off those queues. No big deal. Yeah? They just take fewer bathroom breaks, complain less. It also allows you to route around these failed bots. These bots are failing all the time. So why not use the end-to-end routing capability of BPM to route around it, business continuity. But I think the third one is most important, that APIs are very limited in many sense. Even if you're using Swagger and you're using all RESTful APIs, 80% of applications don't have APIs at all. And of the 20% that do, of the 20% that do, 50% don't have modern APIs, right? So there are all these legacy systems that don't have the budget, the ROI, the business case to do data integration and use APIs or build new ones. So this is where that middleware capability, a way to get through to legacy applications with minimal effort, is one of the great talents of RPA as a category and a good synergy. So this isn't published yet, but we're going to do a tech tide, we call them, on intelligent process automation. So basically, what these are meant to do is to, tell buyers where to invest, where to experiment, where to maintain, and where to divest. And so this is putting a circle around the key technologies that are part of intelligent process automation. In other words, we don't think it's everything. And we think it is the technologies that really surround RPA with the very practical AI building blocks, right? So if you think of it, intelligent process automation is really about practical aspects of automation. So it starts with RPA. So you see things like attended mode RPA, unattended mode RPA. So we've unbundled pieces of it. The chatbots, employee facing. We're going to see a demo of that later on. Things like process discovery. That's really a ramping area right now, trying to understand process in a much broader way. Things like capture are still relevant. Customer communications management, standalone desktop automation. They should be divested. And then in terms of maintenance, process mining, business rules, core systems. Anyway, this is a full report, but this is just a snapshot of what Forrester's definition of intelligent process automation is. So let me just mention a few things in closing here. One is, I mentioned this earlier about scale. In terms of RPA, it's not so good. It's not so good. 51% less than 10 bots. This was, by the way, from your counterparts, for many of you. This was a survey we did of the 100 top integrators of RPA in the world. We asked them all about their customers, numbers, revenues, geography, and levels of scale. So that's kind of where we are as an industry. And one of the reasons is operating models. Companies are just building this. A very complicated slide, I apologize, but that's kind of what you do as analysts. You create really complicated slides and you get to explain them. This is sort of what we do. But basically this shows, the headline here is that the business is building bots, and tech management's trying to catch up. And what they're envisioning is a governance or operating model much like this, where there's a control framework in technology management. Bots are pretty dangerous things. They have human credentials. They're roaming around in your most trusted application areas. So you need a special type of governance for them, and that manifests itself in this control framework, which we have 10 points, which I won't go through. But basically, there's a design authority. Is this application and use case a good one for RPA to be applied to? And this should not be just about RPA, but about other automations as well. So it gives you some way to control the invasion and the creation of automation islands in your organization. Catalogs of reusable automations, SME advice. The best models I've seen are where companies will say, okay, business B, you're going to do this chatbot thing. Here's a template for it. We're going to use Microsoft's tools. So that's what you're going to use, and we'll help you. And that way you end up constricting the amount of, now on the business, you have the automation project starting. They have the human workers today. They understand what the digital workers need to do. It makes total sense. AI is driving innovation into the business where it'll be driven from. And so these teams are cropping up everywhere. The automation teams, which is, we don't like the term center of excellence anymore. Maybe it's too high a bar for where we are as a society today. Or maybe it just has baggage about being too bureaucratic. So we like, mobile, agile, teams that are coordinating things. And there might be multiple. You might have an automation team just on operations, which is very RPA focused, and another one that's maybe just on conversational intelligence. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be one thing. So this is a little bit about my book, Invisible Robots in the Quiet of the Night, which is about a month. It's doing very well. And it's really, the point is that if you watch TV and the media and so forth, all the noise is about physical robots. It's about self-driving cars, and it's about, factory automation and giant things clobbering downstairs. And, the real effect on the workforce and the future of work are on the robots you don't see. They operate in data centers that no one will ever visit. And these are machine learning algorithms. These are conversational intelligence and chatbots and virtual agents, and they're RPA bots. These are ramping. This is what we see. Yeah? And these are the ones that we're going to be driving the next generation of work. And unfortunately, if you look at our 12% persona model of the future of work, you see that it's affecting different personas differently. Now, this is a bit of a dark metaphor, so I apologize. But imagine you're in a building, and you have these 12 personas, and they're on different floors. And people in the lower floors of the building are going to get underwater first, because the water represents the rising intelligence of automation, which is rising every minute because of folks like you. Yeah? So cubicle workers, and these are US data, so I apologize, but there are 20 million of them in the US right now, and we think there'll be 73% of those jobs will be automated in 10 years. Big number. We think that there are coordinator positions. So think about convergence, one of the forces of automation. Who needs fleet managers anymore? You're going to have at least, forget self-driving, you're going to have at least signals about how to coordinate. And there are all kinds of applications where you're coordinating things. If you have a clipboard in your hand, you're probably going to put it down. And as you move up, the water's going to rise, but you have these other personas, different levels of knowledge workers. But there are lots of people that are in these lower positions that have high school degrees and are not going to leave their cubicle and become data scientists anytime soon. So we have a lot of issues with the way work is developing. If you look at and this is, if you're going to take one picture, this is the fundamental of our model for the future of work. You have 29% deficits in 10 years, but you have dividends. We're the only model that has a formula for calculating automation dividends. The net is 16% loss. And by the way, McKinsey's numbers, others are like 45%. So this is not a dystopian, off-the-wall, crazy number. This is, we think, a reasonable number of the number of jobs that will be lost. Now, many of those will go to the talent economy, and we think 30% of the workforce will be in the talent economy, and most jobs will be transformed. So this is what we're having to deal with, and companies are not ready for it. They have old, semantics around jobs. They're thinking of all work must be owned as opposed to leveraging the talent economy. The systems to be able to use people outside the firewall and to manage them effectively we're just nowhere. So we need a different cultural way of thinking about work. I interviewed about 100 people for the book, and I wanted to interview workers, not just the voice of business and the voice of the tech industry, right? So I talked to bank tellers that were, making $15 an hour and had to, buy their own clothes and look professional. And machinists who could no longer handle their machines because they'd been upgraded, so now needed codes to be put in. The setup became so hard that people that were high-performing machinists had to leave. One I interviewed had a nervous breakdown. We have new levels of digital anxiety, a different psychology related to the advancement of automation, taking people out of an end-to-end process where they understood the entire thing, and now they're interlacing and collaborating with a machine doing pieces. What does that do to them mentally? We're going to have some great talks from a PhD anthropologist in my session on some of the human factors we haven't even considered. He told me 2 new ones. I'm getting the hook here, right? So I'm almost done. Everyone asks the same question. Automation has always just shuffled jobs around. It's just created new jobs, removed some, added some. Why is it different this time? These are the 6 reasons we have to think about work differently. I'll just let you read them and try to get off the stage here. So, automation is the next great focus for enterprises. Multiple process technologies will contribute. Process improvement requires a broad view of process that we don't yet have. There's a big process gap, and many of you in the room here will help close that. Thank you very much.